everyone. Welcome to the Self-Awareness Journey podcast. I'm Melissa Albers.
And I'm JJ Parker. This podcast is for seekers, seekers of happiness and joy, seekers of a centered approach to success in life, seekers of their true, authentic selves.
Get ready for some real talk on everything from anxiety, emotions, and habits to love, compassion, and forgiveness. We know you'll be challenged and enlightened by this conversation. We're so glad you're here. Let's dive in.
Melissa, let's talk about like when and how kind of personal development starts for people.
That's a good topic. I love that topic.
You know, like when I kind of think about when I was younger, like I didn't work on personal development. I wasn't in coaching. I never really seeked any of this stuff when I was young.
Right.
But at some point, I started kind of seeking out, like I wanted to know more about myself and how I worked and what made me tick
too.
and what my natural brain wiring was. And that kind of like set me on this journey. But it wasn't until I hit a certain point, maybe of like maturity or life experience or who knows what, until I got really interested in it.
Mm-hmm. Same here. The exact same thing happened for me. You know, the other thing I think that's interesting is a lot of times when people begin the journey of personal growth, and I'm sure you and I are both the same way. Do you remember how you started?
Personality tests.
You took a personality test.
I think,
okay.
Yeah. It must have been a personality test. Yeah.
Okay. For me, what I did is I heard of some books, right? So I entered into the experiment by like glomming onto a book or two and then just pouring into the book. Like that book was gospel for me. And so both of us entered into personal development. Now, this is interesting when you think about it like this. Personal development through our heads.
Yep.
Not through our hearts.
Right. And I'd say for me, not through crisis either. Like sometimes you get into it because it's like something happened, like an event happened in your life.
Oh yeah.
But for me, it wasn't.
That's true.
It wasn't in response to anything. It was just more in curiosity.
Yeah, and crisis could be a single event, or it could just be a way of living that you're just flat out done with.
Mm-hmm.
Not having the right resources, not having the right time, not having the right partner, not having the right job, not being smart enough, not having the right degrees. Like not the absence of something pushed us into what pushes many of us into this choice of development through long-term crisis or a single event. Yep. A divorce or a death in the family or something.
Yeah. The other thing I was reflecting on is that I think there's you have to have a certain mindset to get into the like personal development like space, right?
Yeah, I agree.
When I was younger, I did not have like that confidence or like the comfort in myself to get into that stuff, right? I was pretty like, I don't know, maybe awkward or self-conscious, or it just didn't have the confidence. Yeah. And I wasn't comfortable like in my own skin enough to start exploring what it meant to be me.
Yeah. That's so interesting. And how does that manifest? You know, when you don't feel confident or comfortable and you're trying to push yourself to learn something that has to do with you. I mean, how does that make you feel? It doesn't make you feel even more spurred towards doing it, does it? It scares you and pulls you away.
Yeah, and we've talked about it a lot, like during my imposter syndrome at work. Yeah. Really causes that you not to want to deal with it at all, right?
Right. It pushes you away and just makes you feel like, why even bother?
Yeah.
I remember one of the very first things that I ever did when I wanted to get better with personal development. Well, I mean, I just was, oh my gosh, I made vision boards. I read Think and Grow Rich like 8 times. I took classes on Think and Grow Rich with this mentor that I absolutely adored at the time. And I did all these other things, but I always did it by feeling like I wasn't who those people were talking about. Right? I always felt like, well, this is really cool and it's fun to be around all these people that are getting better, but they don't mean me too. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the same thing as you're talking about. It's just like when you look at yourself through the lens of comparison, mm-hmm. you don't feel good enough in a lot of those environments when you're in a place specifically designed to help you get better. Mm.
Yeah. So tell me, like, you've had some experience, like you've had some big, like, kind of professional / personal development organizations, right? Like you were part of John Maxwell, which is a huge organization. And it's all about like personal development, right?
It is. It's 100% that. Yeah. You know, it's funny. I started that under the premise that I wanted to be good enough to be that. And I put it in my vision board that I was going to see John Maxwell in person someday. That was my big goal.
Yep.
And right after I put that on my vision board, my aunt, who's a minister, called me, and she's good friends with Joyce Meyer, another very famous minister in the United States, who's good friends with John Maxwell. And my aunt said, hey, he's playing in Pensacola in a free event. You should go. And just because of the timing of it, I was like, I'm going. And I flew to Pensacola and sat in an enormous civic center and listened to him talk. And I thought that was the bee's knees, man. Like a little bit like a voyeur though. You know, it was kind of a weird feeling. It was like, I don't know if I really deserve to do this, like to spend this money to go listen to this guy in Pensacola, Florida, when I live in Minneapolis. And it's just really funny how as you develop yourself, your mindset can shift and you become much more open to learning and being and growing. Because obviously I went from that point to joining his coaching organization to then being a mentor and then being one of the 9, at the time there were 18,000 members, one of the 9 teaching partners and being on stage with John and walking away from all of that. And I'll tell you what, it was all because my mindset shifted and my heart shifted to what I believed I was, what I was capable of learning, and how I was going to develop myself. It was like a huge journey for me. And, you know, I got to see some really great things as a result of being part of that. Simon Sinek, I stood in the front row with and listened to Simon Sinek. There were just a number of great thought leaders. Seth Godin, the marketing genius, same thing. Yeah, I've had lots and lots of experiences, but I am absolutely in alignment with you that it isn't just about your mind when you make a decision to try to develop yourself.
Well, it's interesting from your story, like the idea that you describe it as being like voyeuristic at first, like you're just watching from the outside.
Yeah.
So, which kind of means like you didn't feel like you were part of that tribe or that group or those peers for quite a while until maybe you even made it to the top of that group and then you decided to move on from it.
Right. It's funny because when I don't know how to articulate this, but I think personal development is more of an emotional and spiritual exercise, at least in equal parts, as it is to the mental exercise. And too many people, and this sounds like a judgment, but it's my experience. Too many people focused on only the mental part of personal development. Read this book, do what it says, and you will become your own master, right?
Yep. Follow this program, do this script, like take these courses. Yeah. Yeah,
exactly. But paying no attention to how you actually feel about it, or the warning system that comes into your system that says, wait, maybe this one's not quite right for us. Wait, what do you mean quit your job? You can become this great coach. Wait, what do you mean you can become a multi-millionaire if you just find the secret hidden in the book, Think and Grow Rich? There's so many things that's literally, there are thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people who have purchased that book and thought that they would become multimillionaires if they could just discover the secret within.
There's a whole bunch of multimillionaires who have perpetuated that hope.
Yes. Yeah, hope. Exactly. That's what they're selling. They're selling hope. But for me, I think that the whole manifestation of my own development began when I recognized that the only way to truly develop is to pay attention to my heart as well as my mind. And that comes with some deserving, right? Like that's the difference between, yeah, you can read that book. You're still not really part of it, but your mind says you are. Just fake it till you make it. Like I can't even stand that phrase.
So yeah, the whole idea that so many people enter this experience through their head, through the books, through the teaching.
Yeah.
And it's easy, right? I mean, and a lot of times it's pretty motivating, right?
Yeah.
It's easy to get kind of like caught up in
definitely
in the excitement and the hype and here's this famous coach and they're going to tell me exactly how life should be and I'm going to aspire to that and do all the things that they say. So that's not all bad,
I'm going to be
right?
famous and I'm going to have a 6-figure income that I've never had before in my life. I'm going to,
So to me, like that part of personal development, which is kind of around, I guess say like aspirations, but this kind of like goals, it's more goal based, right?
Yes.
I want this, I want that, I want this kind of job, I want this kind of this. You're like you're seeking things.
Yeah. Validation. You're seeking validation on the outside.
That all of those programs have a very similar track to them. Yeah. And they kind of fit a certain kind of formula anyway.
That's so true.
And while they might help you get a better job and they might help you get more money or whatever, are they really personal development?
Right.
Or are they
That's
just more like
question.
personal motivation? Right?
Yeah.
Like, are the things that you learn on a lot of those, like Think and Grow Rich is like a great example to me because what you learn there, it's not like that wasn't within you to begin with.
Right, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe you're like recognizing it a bit more, but the idea that there's like a secret in these books or some of these teachings is kind of silly.
Yeah.
And I think they missed the point. Like the point that you and I have always tried to make is like those are a lot of times they're just talking about an outcome that you can achieve if you actually just try to be a bit more in touch with how you're feeling, listen to yourself more than listen to Napoleon Dynamite more. Wait, no, that's not
Napoleon Hill.
Well, Napoleon Hill. That's funny.
Although Napoleon Dynamite might be, a new thought leader too. We should consider. He probably because when he isn't, what are you doing? Whatever I want.
Whatever I want.
Yeah. No, that's right though. That's right. I like this conversation a lot because I want to ask you something. We've been kind of like debunking some of the standard practices for personal development and not to discredit them completely. There is benefit, obviously, in these programs. There's some benefit in all of these programs. But I think that you and I feel like one of the key components is missing from these development programs to truly be change, personal growth, right? And it's the emotion.
Yep.
And I just think,
go
ahead.
I feel like the thing with the starting with some of these programs and the books and blah 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 is like you might not be ready, right? And one of the things I thought we should talk about is like kind of timing around personal development and self-awareness because the idea that I've observed that some people who are fairly young are really good, are really self-aware, surprisingly self-aware. I'll see them, they'll say something, I'm like, wow, really? Like that's your current thinking? Because when I was 22, not even close.
Not close,
right?
Exactly.
Then I might see someone older than me that hasn't quite developed that part of them just yet. Right. And I'm not, that's not a judgment at all. That's just more kind of saying that for me, I don't feel like I develop that part of myself till a bit later in life too.
Right.
And
Yeah.
So kind of like thinking about like, where am I at with my this introspection and this development, and just recognizing that it does take maybe a while until you're kind of comfortable enough with where you are and who you are before you really want to start getting into self-awareness and personal development.
Well, I agree with you. And I think that it actually has to do with understanding your own why. Why is it that you want to get yourself developed? Is it just because it feels good? Because that's a huge, great reason. Because it feels good to develop. Like, I am a lifelong learner. I love learning. I just got through signing up for a course. I'm on day 4 of improving and amplifying my memory. It's so much fun, right? And I just think that understanding...
Are you going to be able to do that like party trick where you can like remember like 100 numbers in a row?
Yeah. You know what they do?
Awesome.
Okay, side note, the first activity in the first 10 minutes of the first class, you're going to memorize 20 objects in 5 minutes and be able to repeat them backwards and forwards. And I was like, okay, right. Tried it the first time, I got 4. Tried it the second time, got 8. Tried it a third time, and I got 19.
Wow.
Oh, it's so fun. Okay. Anyway, but I think that like I have fun. I enjoy the idea of developing it. It feels good to do it. It emotionally fills something for me, right? And so when you look at the mental exercises of learning, like if it's financial freedom, if it is you want a different, bigger role for yourself in your career, those are all absolutely wonderful things to go for. And developing yourself is a surefire way to move yourself in the direction of having that. There's no doubt about that. However, it has to be a head and heart combination. We have to go with what our feelings are, and we have to experience the joy of what that manifestation would give us before we have the manifestation. And herein lies the problem with many, many personal development things. They say something to you like, when you achieve this, you can have that. And it puts it in a forward future state that you are constantly reaching for. And the law of attraction says that if you are feeling something in the moment, it is occurring. Whatever that you put out is what the attraction gives you. So if you have the I want to be rich someday, what the attraction is hearing is I want. I want. So you never actually have the feeling of having it. So to really start to change how personal development can work for you, being open to this idea that if you have strong control over your emotions or stronger awareness over your emotions, you're actually able to develop yourself in lightning speed and with a much different experience, not just in the having of it, but in the reaching and getting it. So it's that whole law of attraction piece.
So for personal development, the on-ramp is so often intellectual. And how could it be anything else? Like, have you seen another on-ramp? Like the most typical one I hear is like, I read this book, I thought it was interesting, or I did this personality test at work and then I thought it was interesting and I started exploring. How else would we on-ramp if it wasn't that way?
Yeah, that's a great question. And maybe that is the standard way. I mean, maybe it is. There are a couple of things that are a little bit different. Like one of the things that I've studied for years is Abraham Hicks, who is one of the original voices of the law of attraction. Everything Abraham Hicks teaches is feeling your way into things, having a feeling, checking in your feeling, and making a different choice about how you feel about something as the way to manifest all great things. But there aren't a lot of teachings that move in that direction, but they are out there, or even using some of those.
I suppose like meditation, if your entry point was meditation, that's much more about like,
that's good,
like understanding your thoughts, right, and really monitoring your own thoughts, and that's another on-ramp that
that's a good
as
one.
Intellectual.
And I think also, honestly, just being emotionally open to sensing what feels right for you. And it might not be what everybody else is doing. It might not be the latest and greatest sign up and spend money on this development tool. It might not have a thing to do with that. I think just allowing yourself that, and maybe you're right, like that meditation or journaling is also another really, really good way.
Or listening to podcasts about self-awareness.
Oh, do you know of any?
Share with your friends.
Please share with your friends. We're trying to increase our audience. We're not very good at asking.
Well, I hope this stuff, like I started with the head first approach.
Yeah,
obviously, like we've taught a million times, like all I do is start with my brain first and then get deeper later. So I don't want to poo-poo that method because, like, again, it's kind of like the easiest method to
it's the most standard. It's the most standard and common.
And then just kind of finding which of these things resonates the best for you to kind of keep you motivated and going on the journey.
And just like you said, this idea that you have to kind of be ready to be ready. I really like that. You're really referring to the emotional garden being clear of weeds, right? It's like if you have all of these harsh expectations and you're using your past to create your future, those things are all can create barriers for you to develop yourself as freely as you are capable of. So I think just having kind of a free sort of awareness about how you are and allowing yourself grace and allowing yourself change, allowing yourself growth, because it feels good, not for any other external validation, because it feels really good. And then it's amazing how you can develop yourself.
Yeah. And we talk about, well, every week I feel like we talk about expectations.
Yeah.
And last week's podcast was a great example about how your expectations about catching giant fish was
I hated it.
unmet.
I hated that pod.
But the same thing with personal development. You can't go into it with like this expectation that like I am going to be a transformed human being in the next 6 months if I just start reading these books. Like
exactly.
Like it just let it all is gonna come in due time. You just one little baby step at a time. But you really when you start putting expectations around personal development is when you get into a very kind of dangerous spot because
and the slippery slope of the slippery slope of that is all those development programs tell you that's what you're supposed to do. Expect, put yourself out there, what are your goals? And it's like,
So
it's a fine
JJ
balance.
Melissa method is a little bit more low key than that.
But you know what? I believe every single person listening to this pod, every single person absolutely is developing themselves, even by being part of this conversation today. That's how it happens. It's slow and easy. And then huge, massive change happens like so lightning fast when you're not focused on that. You're just focused on the next easy thing that feels right for you and having the feelings of having it, knowing what that feels like before all the money is sitting on your lap. That feeling of, I'm moving in this. I have this already. It's a wonderful feeling. Like that is a beautiful feeling. So
little one step at a time.
One step at a time.
Did you enjoy this episode? Please go to your favorite podcast platform to subscribe, rate, and leave a review so others can discover it as well.
Growing self-awareness is a lifelong journey, and there's always further to go. And it's better when we're all in it together. Please think of someone you know who could benefit from hearing today's conversation and share this episode with them. We can't thank you enough for listening. Until next time, happy exploring, seekers.